Okay, back of another tier list. Let's do the head coach tier list. So 5 tiers here are wins you games, helps win games, sometimes helps, sometimes hurts, passable but not ideal, and then finally not good. Let's start off with a coach that's kind of hard to talk about, Brian Callahan, because he was a first-year head coach last year with Tennessee, and to be honest, didn't do much because what are you supposed to do with that roster? I feel like I'm not going to hold it against him too much that he couldn't make Will Levis work. But still 1 year and I haven't seen enough from you to feel great. So as of right now, passable but not ideal. He's a complete I don't know. I want to see another year. He could honestly end up in many different tiers next year depending on how it goes. But for now, that's where I'm going to have him. Mike McDaniel is another interesting guy who people have kind of turned on, and ultimately they haven't had great results as of late, especially late in the season. They haven't looked great when they didn't have Tua there. I think part of that is the organization neglecting the backup quarterback position so much, but I think some people would put him into passable but not ideal. I'm going to put him in sometimes helps but sometimes hurts. I think I'm higher on him than most. I still think the X's and O's are really good, and I think sometimes it's and we'll see this with some other, guys, but I'm just sort of I don't judge people too harshly when their players get injured and then they can't succeed, right? That was Vic Fangio last year when he asked what went wrong with the Dolphins at the end of the year. He said, we lost all our starters. What were we supposed to do? That's kind of how I view it with McDaniel a little bit, but I do think there are some criticisms, so I get it. Aaron Glenn, so he's very interesting because we don't know how he's going to be as a rookie head coach, and I could just not include the rookie head coaches, but it's fun. I think he will be in. I'm going to just put him in the middle tier for now, and we'll see what happens. It's definitely a big question mark as to how he can be because we haven't seen him, but I think seems like a really good rah-rah guy. Should be good at building a culture, and also I do really like the X's and O's. Even if the defense wasn't great last year for the Lions, that was a personnel thing. The X's and O's were very good, so we'll see. But as of right now, again, need more information is really where I'd put him. Maybe I should have made a tier for that, but that's where we have it right now. Zach Taylor, yeah, I think I'm going to put him in the sometimes helps but sometimes hurts as well tier. I mean, I think the one thing you do have to give Zach Taylor credit for is the fact that he has developed a lot of these young players well. And maybe that's just they would have been great regardless, but maybe not. I don't know. And for Zach Taylor, the criticism I had the year that they went to the Super Bowl was he just would not stop running on first downs, it felt like. It felt like he had a mindset and didn't adjust his mindset to the team around him. He has, I think, gotten better as a head coach. There still are some issues that I have with him. I can't put him in any higher than the middle tier, but ultimately, and again, the results are the results. Missing the playoffs with Joe Burrow can't happen. I think the Bengals could go with an upgrade, but that's just kind of, he's made a Super Bowl. I can't fully knock him. That's just kind of how I view it. Next up is Kevin Stefanski, who, I don't know, I like Kevin Stefanski enough, right? I think the knock on him is he's not super clever. He just kind of consistently makes solid calls, and also the team was horrible last year, but guys won 2 Coach of the Year awards. I'll bump him up a tier. I'll put him into helps win games. Sure, I think he's usually a positive usually a positive asset, I would say. Liam Cohen for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, again, lots remains to be seen, right? There was the whole scandal of how he ended up leaving Tampa Bay and all that, which we don't have to get into, but I don't know. I think he's good X's and O's guy. Seems to be a guy who is liked in the locker room. I followed it closely being a Tampa Bay fan. I thought that he was one of the top candidates. And I think his X's and O's were really good. So I'm going to put him into helps win games tier. The Lions are next on this list. Dan Campbell, come on. I know people have turned on Dan Campbell. In my opinion, he should have won Coach of the Year last year. What he did building the culture was truly impressive. Now, the two knocks on him, one fair, one unfair. First, he goes for it on 4th downs too much, which, okay, there are the occasional 4th down call I don't love, but for the most part, he's pretty good at that stuff. The results of what he does going for it on 4th down work out more than just about anybody else in the league, so I don't really agree with that criticism. The other one isn't really a criticism, but more so just talking about what he actually does. For Dan Campbell and for the Lions, definitely a big part of why they were good last year was the X's and O's. Dan Campbell's not an X's and O's guy. He hired great coordinators, and he deserves credit for that. But did he do a great job at hiring coordinators, or did he get lucky? Well, we'll see, because now he has to hire 2 more, and we'll see how all this goes. Kevin O'Connell, I'm gonna be maybe, is this too hyperbolic to put him in the top tier? I mean, I don't know. He won Coach of the Year and I think deserved it. We had a situation where Sam Darnold was awesome last year and everyone was saying, okay, but is he actually awesome or is it the coaching? Well, that's a good thing to be in if you're a head coach. And again, the defensive X's and O's too are really good. He did a good job at trusting Brian Flores, and that's very much worked out. I don't think this team goes. I'm not sure if this is a playoff team with mediocre coaching, and they were nearly the 1 seed. Fell off at the end, and there's some valid criticisms there, but ultimately, I don't think it's crazy to do that. Next up, we have Todd Bowles, who, again, I don't know. He's a frustrating one, because on one hand, you can't deny the results. He's won the division 3 times, although on the other hand, in his first 2 years, he had a 500 record. They won the division with a sub 500 record with Tom Brady in Tom Brady's last year, and then went 9-8 with Baker Mayfield. We're a little better last year, even with the injuries, but the defense was not great. He is a defensive guy, although again, I think part of that was just injuries. I'm thinking about this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put him in passable, but not ideal. And to be honest, I'm going to also put Zach Taylor down there as well. I think that I that feels better for Zach Taylor, because I do think he's passable, but I don't think he's ideal. I think that's a good tier for that. For Bowles, I think that there's things that he does well. He will at times help you win a game, so maybe I could argue he should be in a higher tier, but I think that more often than not, it's just the great Todd Bowles games are great, the bad Todd Bowles games are very bad, and usually you're kind of just getting a net neutral there, so passable but not ideal is what I'm doing. Kyle Shanahan, again, I'm a big Kyle Shanahan guy. I know there's people that have kind of turned on him to some degree. I know that when his whole team gets injured, it doesn't look great, but usually his whole team isn't injured, and usually it looks great. The X's and O's, I still think, are the best in the league offensively. I just do. And I think he's done a good job of hiring defensive coordinators as well. So, yeah, I'm willing to put him in the top tier. Raheem Morris, it did not go great first year for Atlanta. And to be honest, there were many just like simple things, like clock management stuff that I didn't like. There were some weird decisions with the preseason stuff, not playing Michael Penix, which meant that he had to essentially just get thrown into the mix cold. Not playing Kirk Cousins either, right? Like, why aren't you playing these guys in preseason when they need the reps? Penix has never played NFL reps. Cousins missed the whole season due to injury. Some weird decisions, and I think that they could have made the playoffs with decent coaching last year. So, as of right now, I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to put it in not good. That being said, first-year head coach, he could fix some of those issues. We've seen that happen. Coaches can get better, right? Granted, he's not actually a first-year head coach. He was a Tampa Bay head coach for a bit, but still, you get the idea. Next up, John Harbaugh of the Baltimore Ravens, who I think is a good coach. I mean, the knock is that there have been really consistent moments in the playoffs where the team, quite frankly, just underperforms, and that's not good. You can't have that happen. So that's the issue. But ultimately, I do think that, again, X's and O's tend to be very good. He hires really good coordinators consistently. He has won a Super Bowl. I know it's, 13 years ago now, but he has won a Super Bowl. But yeah, you can't put him in a top tier due to the knack of kind of team underperforming in big games. Put Shanahan above him, so I'm being a bit of a hypocrite here, and Kevin O'Connell, but we've seen it more, I think, with Harbaugh, and I don't think he gives you quite the positives that Shanahan gives you in most moments. So that's my logic. You can disagree, but that's my logic. Ben Johnson of the Bears, who again, I feel like for a lot of the young players and young coaches, I'm going to have to just put here because, okay, the X's and O's were awesome last year. If Shanahan wasn't number one, it's because Ben Johnson is number one, not just last year, but these past few years. That being said, there's a lot more to being a head coach than just X's and O's. What's going to happen there? I just don't know, so that's how I'm viewing it. Brian Schottenheimer of the Dallas Cowboys, who's been kind of a career assistant, and it almost seemed as though he got hired for the head coaching job because he was around. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to see how it'll work out. I don't fully understand the logic behind it, but he could work out. NFL teams know more about him than I do, so we'll see how it goes. But I think passable but not ideal feels fair there. DeMeco Ryans is a head coach who, I don't know, it's interesting because I think last year people were a lot higher on him. The Texans had this big turnaround. This year they didn't really improve in many areas. I think a big part of it is just the issue of the offensive line has continued to get bigger and bigger. So I don't know. I like him as a head coach. I don't know how much I like him as of right now, but I'll put him into sometimes help, sometimes hurt. I think that's a fair tier for him. I don't know. There are things to like about him, and his teams do play well in the playoffs, so you definitely get credit there. Shane Steichen of the Indianapolis Colts is another interesting one because I do feel like the Colts have overperformed in both years he's been the head coach for them. They've really struggled to figure out the quarterback position, in my opinion. Richardson has not played great and has struggled to stay on the field. He got a lot of criticism when he decided to go with Joe Flacco over Richardson, but I kind of understood it because, like, at a certain point, you have to try and win football games, right? That's what a head coach is supposed to do, is put the guy in who can help you win games. So, I don't know. I'm going to put him in the middle tier for now. Sometimes helps, sometimes hurts. We'll see if he can, I want to see him with a more talented quarterback situation before I really judge him one way or the other. Sean McVay, I mean, it's hard to put him in any tier but the top tier, right? I mean, the guy's won a Super Bowl recently. Again, the X's and O's tend to consistently be fantastic offensively and has a great track record of hiring defensive coordinators as well. So, yeah, definitely that's where I have McVay. Jim Harbaugh, who I think I got to also put in the top tier, right? I mean, the way these teams consistently turn around, how can I not put him in that tier? That's just really good stuff. The Raiders went out and hired Pete Carroll, who, listen, has seen a lot of success. There is always the dilemma of, do you go out and hire a established head coach? Because on one hand, well, they're established. They know what they're doing. On the other hand, usually they're available for a reason, right? Pete Carroll, who's 73 years old, I think he'll be okay. I think that there will be good aspects. He can help build a culture, which is kind of what the Raiders need right now. There are some weird quirks that he does. Again, he's 73. He has a bit more of an old school mindset sometimes, so you kind of get that. But as a whole, I have no issue with Pete Carroll. The middle tier feels fine. The Commanders, Dan Quinn, who was awesome last year. I guess the question is, can I put him all the way in the top tier? If it's just 1 year, I'm going to be just a little bit more strict with him because I didn't love what he did in Atlanta outside of the 1 year with the Kyle Shanahan thing where they went to the Super Bowl. I didn't think that he was a great coach then. Seems like he's really improved a lot, though. So I will say that he's a defensive guy. The defense has to get better. Like, that's, I think, a fair knock. But, I mean, again, the way that he went for it on fourth down like that, understanding the team, really good stuff. So I can't put everyone in top tier, but I could easily see next year me putting him there. For the Chiefs, listen, I know not going off their best game, but you got to put them in the top tier, right? In fact, I'm almost feeling like I need to differentiate top tier a little bit because there's too many teams. Maybe I'll add an elite tier. I can add an elite tier. Why not? Okay, I'm adding the elite tier and added the teams that are the coaches that I already had. Only Reed and McVay are the two that I'm going to keep in the elite tier. The other four still very good, of course, but you got to have a Super Bowl ring if you're going to be in the elite tier. So yeah, Reed's got 3 of them. I honestly thought this was kind of a banner year for Andy Reid. I know it didn't work out in the Super Bowl, but they did not have a lot of receiving help, and they were still able to be successful. So yeah, definitely feels pretty solid for me there. For the Saints, Kellen Moore, who I don't know what to make of him. You know, there's kind of 2 different types of these young coordinators, young offensive coordinators. It feels like there is the new school, the Ben Johnson, the Kyle Shanahan, the Sean McVay, and then there's Kellen Moore, who kind of has a more old school approach despite being a younger offensive mind. Only 36 years old. So I think, I think he got drafted. He was a former player. He was drafted, I think, like 2 years before Derek Carr was. So, like, that's, definitely younger there. Might have some new school things that way. But X's and O's wise isn't that clever, although that might be what the Saints want. So I don't know exactly what to make of Kellen Moore. I mean, I could just continue to put all these in this tier, but I don't know. I'm not quite as high on him as some other people are. So I'm going to put him in passable, but not ideal. But again, who knows of this stuff, right? So complete guessing game. Next, we have Brian Dable, who So the Giants decided not to fire him despite the results, which I kind of agree with that mindset. If you like him as a coach and think that he's a good coach, you don't have to fire him. So I kind of like that they did that, and I kind of agree. Like, he was really good the year they made the playoffs. The reality is, like, there just hasn't been talent that he can work with. So yeah, I think sometimes help, sometimes hurt. I can't put him higher because the results are the results, but that's where I have him. For the Philadelphia Eagles, for the Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni is the guy who, I mean, again, so much gets talked about, but ultimately he has a Super Bowl like 3 years, or 4 years of a head coach, has made the Super Bowl twice, won it once. I'm going to put him in wins you games because I do think there can be there's some weird things he's done, right? He's made some weird choices, and 2 years ago still happened, but ultimately, how can you not at least have him in the top 2 tiers? The guy just won a Super Bowl. I think that feels fair. Next up, we have Mike Tomlin, who I think is great. I think Mike Tomlin gets a lot of criticism due to the results, but he's another guy where I kind of feel like, what is he supposed to do with these rosters? A good coach can't just win a Super Bowl. Like, that's not how that works. That being said, I think there were some questionable decisions that you could argue didn't work out. I think you could argue he's a bit too cautious in certain situations. So I'm willing to say that I'll put him in just the second tier. I think I'm willing to do that. Not quite have him in the top tier, but I'm not going to have him lower than that. Sean Payton, another guy who's just one of the best coaches in football. I mean, again, the way he's turned around this Broncos team, even 2 years ago with Russell Wilson, was nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be. And then this year, really good stuff with Bo Nix, and another guy who seems like even without the best receiving core, he can scheme guys open, but they could still use a receiver. You then have the Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur, who, again, I really like. I think the X's and O's are consistently great. I think he has finally seemingly figured out the defensive coordinator thing, which was his kind of one knock. So yeah, I'm going to put him in wins you games as well. I'm high on a lot of coaches. Didn't realize that would be this way, but yeah, I think he's good. You then have Dave Canales, who So Dave Canales, what he's shown with the Carolina Panthers and with previous teams is he's great at quarterback development. Geno Smith had a breakout year with Dave Canales there. Baker Mayfield, great year with Dave Canales there. And then, Bryce Young now. So as the old expression goes, 2's a coincidence, 3 is a trend. Well, now it's a trend. The thing is, there's a lot more that goes into being a head coach now. And now we have to see him do the other stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. He did a great job with what he was supposed to do, so I'm going to put him in the helps win games tier for now. We'll see how well that goes in the future. But yeah, that's where I have him. Next, we have Jonathan Gannon, who, I feel like I like. I think that it's gone pretty well with the Cardinals, and I even thought that their defense overperformed given the talent level it had. Again, you're in a rebuilding situation. You can't expect him to just come in and be great right away, but they're continuing to move in the right direction. So as of right now, I feel like I have mostly positive things. I'm looking at this. D'Amico Ryan should be higher, right? Or I don't know. I feel like this feels weird, right? Because I feel like D'Amico Ryan should be higher than this, but is he on the same tier as Jim Harbaugh and Dan Quinn? I don't know. I guess I'll just keep him there. That's where I thought of it. But now for Jonathan Gannon, I think I'm going to, I'm kind of in between these two tiers, I guess. I think, I'm going to put him in this tier just because ultimately the results still have to matter. I haven't seen great results, which, again, should Dave Canales be there? Well, Dave Canales got the results he needed. His job was to help out Bryce Young, and he did. Now his job is to win. Again, not blaming Jonathan Gannon for not having made the playoffs yet, but just to be determined. But as a whole, I am positive about him as a head coach. So hopefully view my opinions, not necessarily just the tier rankings. But Sean McDermott is an interesting one because I think I have to put him in this tier of sometimes helps, sometimes hurts. And he usually helps, right? But it just feels like it's really against the Chiefs is the main thing. He just can't figure that out. And in fairness, I don't know who can figure that out. Vic Fangio and Todd Bowles seemingly are the only two, right? I guess the Bengals did as well once, but that's seemingly it. Even the Patriots, when they beat Mahomes went off in that game. But ultimately, losing to Mahomes is fine. It feels like they consistently get crushed, and that's why I'm just a little lower. So I think, again, it usually helps, but in the big moments, it seemed like he really can't figure it out, and that's why I have the Bills there. Then we have the Seattle Seahawks, which Mike Macdonald, his first year, they did all right. I think I have to, again, just put him in the middle tier. I want to see more, but seemingly are moving in the right direction. And then finally, Mike Vrabel, who, yeah, I really like Mike Vrabel. I think that I didn't fully get why Tennessee moves off of him when they did. I think I'm going to put him into wins you games tier. I think he's really good. So, yeah, as a whole, I confused myself a little bit on these two tiers and where the difference was. I should have clarified that a little better for myself, but hopefully you at least understand my thoughts on each of the coaches and why I put them in one of those two tiers. A lot of really good head coaches. I would not have guessed that Sean McVay would be the only other coach I put in the elite tier, but I think part of it is kind of the other guys I would have usually put in, like Kyle Shanahan had a down year. I kind of have to dock him for that. Mike Tomlin had a down year. I kind of have to dock him for that. So because of that, I feel like I'm kind of left with just those two. But I really like Sean McVay, so I don't hate that. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I also did not expect only one coach to be in the bottom tier. Sorry, Raheem Morris. Didn't mean to do you like that. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.